Nav, real quick,
I'm
Nav.
listening.
Yeah, the scenario is okay. So if you are a lot of flat earthers, I think actually get it wrong as far as just assuming that if you went up in a hot air balloon, right, like at like a latitude where the ground is moving like 500 miles an hour, let's say, right. Well, the reason that the Globers give, which may be at least somewhat acceptable, is that if you jumped up in the air or you went up in a hot air balloon, well, you're retaining the conserved momentum from being on the ground, right? So if you went up, you'd automatically be moving 500 miles an hour with that latitude of the Earth rotation, right? You get that concept?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
Actually, you start to lose some immediately as you increase the R.
yeah, but that aside, let's just say that you could go up at a 500 mile per hour latitude, and you would just stay with the Earth, and that's the reason that we're given for this conserved momentum, and that's why you don't see the Earth moving right below you, even though, like Stone said, it could be argued that you start to lose that conserved momentum right away. Regardless, let's say you do, and you jump up or go up in a hot air balloon or a helicopter, and you go up, and you're moving 500 miles an hour with that latitude. But then if the helicopter, let's say it's a plane, and the plane flies to the equator, right, to an airport that's moving 1,000 miles an hour, right? How is it that the pilot is unaware, or how is it that he would be aware and doesn't do anything, to have the plane now moving in a perfect one-to-one relationship with that 1,000 mile per hour landing strip that he needs to treat as stationary? Because you do agree that you just treat the Earth as stationary when you're landing, right?
So I'm trying to picture myself being in the position that you're describing as if I'm jumping off of a big ball that is spinning. It's supposed to be going faster as it gets to the equator due to the spin, right?
Yeah,
Is that what I'm
tangential
saying?
velocity. The globe claims it's 1,000 miles at the equator and tapers up to zero, right, at the poles. So it'd be moving. The ground would literally be moving twice as fast. So how does the plane then stay in that one-to-one relationship with the eastward tangential velocity when it only had the 500 from being on the ground at that latitude?
That's where I got cognitive dissonance because I can't really say that the physical plane that I just left is moving faster than when I actually get down to the actual ground again.
No,
That's
well, I would say it's because it's not. I mean, the only way that I would say that it would make sense that the pilot would be taught to treat the Earth as stationary is if it's actually stationary. And this is one way of pointing that out, because you'd have to have the plane be moving eastward regardless of its direction. Now, think about if it goes west southwest, right? Now it's aiming away from the spin, going against the spin and getting to the equator. Either way, it needs to be moving 500 miles per hour faster or twice as fast as where it started out, right? But you only have the conserved momentum from being on the ground at 500 miles per hour. You don't get more just from being in the air, and you have winds blowing in all directions. So how would the plane automatically be moving eastward twice as fast? So it could just treat the Earth as stationary. Even worse yet, what if it lands going westward? Now it's got to be moving 1,000 miles an hour backwards, or 500 miles compared to where it started. Now it's got to be moving 500 miles per hour backwards to stay in a one-to-one relationship with the rotation of the Earth, so it could treat the landing strip as perfectly stationary, facing west.
I the only conceptual thing I could possibly answer that is with the distortion in the words that you're using is making it hard to land the plane.
What do you mean? It's not the distortion. I'm just talking about the globe model claims. They say it's a
Yeah,
thousand miles an
and
hour
that's kind
ground
of
speed.
I
The
can't
ground
answer
speed.
that. Yeah, sorry.
Well, what's the distortion in the way I'm saying it?
No, in my brain, to
Okay.
conceptualize it, there's a distortion that I cannot get past that you're trying to land the plane with to connect the dots to say it's either true or false because I can't connect those dots.
Okay, but you do
It's not.
understand the globe model
I can
claims that the ground speed at the equator is a
I can
thousand miles
see
an
it for
hour.
what it is. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So does that present any kind of like a little bit of a wait a minute kind of reaction other than just distortion?
What do you mean reaction? It doesn't
Like
affect my.
maybe the reason that the pilot's able to just treat the Earth as stationary no matter which tangential velocity he lands at is because the Earth is actually stationary.
Dave, you're assuming he's a pilot, and he's not.
Well, he understands
Well,
the basics at least enough to understand this doesn't work.
yeah,
I
and to
believe I
be
can speak
fair,
for myself, but thanks.
earlier he did say that he had to account for Coriolis effect. So maybe maybe we could.
Yeah,
You're
that's what
not
I
able
was
to
actually.
Planes,
That's what
like,
piqued my interest in talking to you. You said you have to account for Coriolis. Now, wait a minute. I do understand that would be mixed with the winds, right? It would be too little compared to the winds, and that's a totally different thing than keeping up with the twice as fast ground that you have to land on. Totally different than Coriolis. Coriolis would be a westward, slightly westward adjustment, right? And it's just too small compared to the winds, most say. But is that what you think?
No, so in the navigation, when I look at a sextant and I am up at altitude measuring my height observed to observed body, sun, moon, 57 navigational stars, and I am in a east-west direction, I have to account for Coriolis on the bubble, which affects my height observed.
And
So
how is
in
that?
my calculations, I take that into account. Yeah, this is something that you have to. I haven't done this in fucking 30 years, but you have to take into that Coriolis effect, and it does matter when you go over time. If you do not have that Coriolis effect encountered, you will not reach your destination. You're going to be 20, 30 miles off, and you will be affected.
Right. Now that could also be about the ether wind, to be honest, with a little bit of
Even
Coriolis
if you're
effect could be
going have
making it.
right to left winds and you still account for it because of the Coriolis, you are going to land north because you did not take care of that correction.
Right. And that is a separate thing because that would actually deflect you to the west, and the accounting for that's not going to make you go twice as fast eastward. It's just going to be a little adjustment. So I think that gets conflated a lot of times. At least I've noticed with these people that argue, well, just correct for the Coriolis and you're back on track, and then you're automatically, eventually incrementally going just as fast as the Earth is when you get there. But that's not really the case because just being over a certain point at a certain latitude doesn't mean that you've increased your speed necessarily. If you were in a Cessna, and you're only going 100 miles an hour. Are you going to be going, 100 miles an hour forward? Is your vector sideways going to be, 1,000 miles an hour when you get to the equator when you took off at 500? And the plane's not even made to go that fast. So these are the things that separate the kinematics, the concept that you would just be automatically at that speed. Kinematically, you could say that's just a rule. We're just going to cancel that out and say that we are over the city that's going that fast, so the plane must be going that fast eastward, right? But but the realistic dynamics of it would not really work out that way because you have to actually have a mechanism that accelerates the plane sideways or backwards or whatever it needs to be in sync with the Earth. And then I make it even harder. If you're going to say you can't get the clearing to land and you're circling the airport for an hour or something to get the clearing to land, then you have to imagine whatever this imaginary force is that doesn't exist is automatically keeping you in sync with the Earth as you go side to side, backwards and forwards as you're circling. It would have to move in all directions, and that doesn't work. You're not just going to be moving 1,000 miles an hour in the eastward vector, also only forwards 100 miles an hour down to zero when you land. Think about it. It would have to stay in perfect sync with the rotation at twice as fast at the equator. And I know you don't know that there's an answer because it just causes cog dis, but that's my question for you.
It's very interesting to conceptualize. I give you that. It's very hard to wrap your head around it.
Well, thanks for being honest about that, at least. We can move on to other conversations, or if anyone has more questions about that concept.